So there are 4 people sitting on top of a rocket, and that rocket is about to push them farther away from Earth than any human has gone in over 50 years. Not in a movie, not in a simulation, in real life. And the question nobody really asks is, what does that actually feel like? Not just physically, but in the body, in the gut, in the mind. What is going through a person when they are sitting in that seat, knowing they are about to leave everything behind? That is exactly what we are going to walk through today. Every single phase of the Artemis 2 mission, and at each step, we are going to talk about what those 4 astronauts are actually feeling in their bodies and in their heads. Because the science of what happens to a human body and mind during a mission like this is something most people never hear about. And it is shocking. We are going to start from the moment they wake up on launch day. We are going to go through the launch itself. We are going to follow them out past the moon, and we are going to come all the way back to Splashdown. By the end of this, you will understand what it means to be a human being in deep space in a way that very few people on Earth ever get to understand. Let's start at the beginning. Launch day morning. It is around 3 or 4 in the morning. The 4 astronauts, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen, wake up at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. They have probably been awake before the alarm even went off. Not because they are scared, though there is certainly something sitting in the chest, but because the body does something interesting when it knows something massive is about to happen. It starts producing a stress hormone. That hormone does not let you sleep past a certain point. Now here is something important to understand. These are not ordinary people who just decided one day to fly to the moon. They have trained for years. Reed Wiseman has been in space before. Victor Glover has too. They have floated in zero gravity. They have done spacewalks. They have lived on the space station for months, so they are not walking into the unknown blind. But Artemis 2 is different. This is not the space station hanging 250 miles above Earth. This is going 200, that is almost 1,000 times farther. And that changes things. So they wake up. They eat breakfast. NASA actually pays attention to what they eat because a heavy stomach before a launch is a bad idea. Something light. Something they can keep down. Because what is coming in just a few hours is going to shake their bodies in ways that even experienced astronauts have to prepare for. They get into their orange suits. These suits are called launch and entry suits. They are not the suits they will use in space. These are specifically for launch and landing when the danger is highest. The suits are pressurized. They are designed so that if something goes wrong and the cabin loses pressure, the astronaut survives. Getting into one of these suits takes time. It is not like putting on a jacket. There is a team of people helping them, and while that is happening, most astronauts report a very specific feeling, a kind of calm, almost strange calm, because at this point, there is nothing left to do. The training is done. The preparation is done. All that is left is they ride out to the launch pad in a vehicle called the Astronaut Transport Vehicle. It is essentially a modified van, and there is something almost funny about the image. 4 people in giant orange suits, riding in a van, about to do the most extreme thing a human being can do. But that ride matters. It is the last time they will feel the ground under them for weeks. At the launch pad, they look. The Space Launch System rocket, the one that will carry them, is 322 feet tall. To give you a sense of that is taller than and it is sitting there loaded with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, fuels that burn at temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. The rocket is already venting those fuels as gas, which means there are white clouds drifting off it. It groans and creaks as the cold fuel moves through its pipes. The astronauts can hear it. They can feel a faint vibration in the ground. They take the elevator up, floor by floor, and they walk across a bridge into the capsule. The capsule is called Orion. It is about the size of a large SUV on the inside. 4 seats, screens everywhere, windows that look out onto the launch pad and into the Florida sky. They strap in, the hatch closes, and now it is just them inside a metal shell at the top of an enormous rocket. For the next couple of hours, they wait. Ground teams run through hundreds of checks, and the astronauts sit there. Some astronauts have described this waiting period as one of the hardest parts, not because anything is happening, but because nothing is happening yet, and the mind starts to wander. Some people pray. Some go over checklists in their heads. Some just breathe. Victor Glover has talked openly about his faith and how it centers him in moments like this. Reed Wiseman has talked about focusing on the job, thinking about the specific tasks he needs to do after launch rather than thinking about the launch itself. And then the final minutes start counting down. At about 30 seconds before launch, the engines begin their ignition sequence. The astronauts can feel it before they hear it, a deep rumble that starts in the bones, not on the skin. The rocket is not moving yet, but the engines are already firing, and the sound is so massive that it travels through the structure of the rocket itself into their seats and into their bodies. At 0, the hold-down bolts release, and the rocket lifts off. Here is the thing most people do not realize about launch. It does not feel fast at first. In the first few seconds, a rocket this large is moving relatively slowly. It has to fight its own 8.8 million pounds of thrust, pushing against millions of pounds of rocket and fuel. So it rises, slowly at first, then faster and faster and faster. What the astronauts feel during this is called G-force. G-force is the pressure your body feels when it is being accelerated. When you are sitting still on Earth, you feel 1 G. That is just normal gravity. During launch, the astronauts can feel up to 3 Gs. That means their bodies feel 3 times heavier than normal. A person who weighs 150 pounds would feel like they weigh 450 pounds during peak acceleration. What does that actually feel like? Imagine someone sitting on your chest, not one person, 3 people, and they are not just sitting there. They are pressing down as the rocket shakes and vibrates. The vibration during launch is intense. The whole capsule is shaking, not like a car on a bumpy road, more violent than some astronauts have compared it to being inside a washing machine. Everything rattles. The screens flicker. The seats absorb some of it, but not all. And through all of this, the astronauts have to stay calm enough to monitor their instruments and respond if something goes wrong. 2 minutes into the flight, the solid rocket boosters finish burning and fall away. When that happens, the crew feels a sudden jolt. The vibration changes. For a brief moment, it almost feels like the rocket slowed down, but it did not. It is just that the roughest part of the ride has ended, and the remaining engines are smoother. 8 minutes after launch, the main engines cut off. And then something extraordinary happens. The shaking stops, the pressure stops, and the astronauts go weightless. That first moment of weightlessness is something every astronaut describes differently, but most of them say some version of the same thing. It is not what they expected. You might imagine floating up out of your seat dramatically, but it is more subtle than that. Things just start to drift. Dust, crumbs from a pre-launch snack, small pieces of anything that were not tied. They all rise slowly and hang in the astronauts themselves, still strapped in, feel a loosening, a lightness, like a weight has been taken off every joint in their body at once. And then the nausea hits. Not for everyone, and not always immediately, but about half of all astronauts, even experienced ones, experience what NASA calls space adaptation syndrome in the first day or 2. Most people call it space sickness, and it is the inner ear, which is how your body senses balance and orientation on Earth, is completely confused in weightlessness. On Earth, your inner ear is always being pulled down by gravity. It knows which way is down. In space, there is no down. The inner ear sends confusing signals to the brain. The brain cannot make sense of them, and the result is often nausea, dizziness, and sometimes vomiting. Victor Glover experienced this on his previous mission to the space station. He has been open about it. It takes usually 1 to 3 days for the body to adapt. During those first days, the crew moves slowly and carefully. They eat simple foods, they avoid rapid head movements, they take medication if needed, and they work through it because the mission does not stop because someone's stomach is unhappy. After launch, Orion circles Earth a couple of times to make sure all systems are working. And then comes a moment that is one of the most important in the entire mission. The engine fires again and they leave Earth's orbit. They are now on their way to the moon. This is called translunar injection, and it is the moment when something changes, not just physically, but psychologically. Here is why. When you are in orbit around Earth, you are only a few hundred miles up. If something went wrong, an emergency return is possible within hours. The space station has that as its safety net. But the moment Orion fires that engine and heads toward the moon, that changes. With each passing hour, they are farther from Earth, and getting back is no longer a quick trip. It would take days no matter what. That reality settles in. And even for trained, experienced astronauts, it is something the mind has to process. Reed Wiseman, who commands this mission, has talked about responsibility. He is responsible for the crew. Every decision he makes from this point forward affects all 4 of them. That weight is real. It does not crush a person who is trained for it, but it does not disappear either. It is always there in the background. The journey from Earth to the moon takes roughly 3 to 4 days, and those days in transit are not dramatic. They are not like an action movie. They are actually quite ordinary in some ways. The crew has a schedule. They eat meals, they exercise, they sleep. They do maintenance checks on Orion. They communicate with mission control in Houston. There are scheduled rest periods, but there is also a psychological thing that happens during this transit that researchers have been studying for years. It is called the overview effect, and it starts happening the moment astronauts look back at Earth from space. Here is what that looks like. You are floating near a window. You look out, and there is Earth, but it is not the Earth you are used to seeing. It is a ball. A small, round, blue and white ball sitting in absolute blackness. No borders between countries. No lines between states, just this glowing sphere in the middle of nothing. Astronauts who have experienced this say it changes something in the brain, not in a metaphorical way, in a real felt way. The sense of human divisions, of politics, of problems that seemed enormous from the ground, suddenly seems very small. At the same time, the sense of how precious and fragile that small ball is becomes overwhelming. Some astronauts have cried, not from sadness, from something closer to awe. Edgar Mitchell, who walked on the moon during Apollo 14, described it as a sudden, overwhelming knowing, a feeling of connection to everything. He said it was the most powerful experience of his life. The Artemis 2 crew will have that experience, and they will have it while also knowing that they are about to go farther from that little ball than almost any human in history. By the time they reach the moon, something has already shifted in their bodies beyond the nausea. Fluid in the body starts redistributing. On Earth, gravity pulls fluids downward toward the legs and feet. In weightlessness, that does not happen. So fluid moves toward the upper body and the head. The face gets slightly puffy. The legs get thinner. Astronauts often say they feel like they have a constant, mild head cold. The nasal passages swell slightly. The head feels full. It is not painful, but it is constant and takes getting used to. At the same time, the spine changes. Vertebrae in the back, compressed by gravity on Earth, begin to decompress in space. The astronauts actually get taller, by about 1 inch to 2 inches. But this comes with back discomfort, particularly in the first week. The muscles and tissues that hold the spine in its normal shape are now being stretched into a new shape, and that hurts. The muscles of the legs and lower body, which on Earth are constantly working just to keep the person upright, now have almost nothing to do, so they begin to weaken quickly. This is why exercise in space is not optional. It is a medical requirement. Orion is not large enough for the kind of exercise equipment on the space station, so the crew has resistance bands and specific exercises planned. But even with that, the body begins losing muscle and bone density almost immediately in space. On a mission this length, that is something to manage carefully. And now they are near the moon. The moon from Earth looks beautiful and peaceful, a glowing disk in the night. But when you are close to it, really close, it looks completely different. It is gray. It is scarred. It is covered in craters of every size, from tiny pits to massive basins. There is no atmosphere, so there is no softening of the light. The shadows are pure black. Sunlit areas are blazing white. Nothing in between. The Artemis 2 crew will make a close approach, coming within a few thousand miles of the lunar surface, and they will also go around the far side of the moon, the side that permanently faces away from Earth. When they do that, something happens that no crew has experienced since the Apollo missions. They will lose contact with Earth completely. The moon will be between them and Earth, and no signal can get through. For roughly 20 to 30 minutes, they will be completely alone. No voices from mission control, no data link, nothing. Astronauts who have experienced this before describe it with a mix of words. Some say it is peaceful. Some say it is eerie. Some say it is the most profound isolation a human can feel. You are at a point in space where you are farther from every other human being on Earth than anyone currently alive. The entire population of Earth, 8 billion people, is on the other side of that rocky, and you are on the other side of it alone. For Christina Koch, who will be the first woman to travel this far from Earth, this moment carries particular weight. He has spoken about what it means to be part of a mission that is expanding who gets to go. and what it means for the girls and young women watching. That sense of purpose does not disappear even in the silence behind the moon. In many ways, it probably deepens. After the moon flyby, Orion begins its long journey home. And this is where the psychological challenge of the mission enters a different phase. The excitement of launch is behind them. The drama of the lunar flyby is behind them. What is ahead is several more days of transit, and the human mind, even a trained one, is not built for extended periods of confinement with limited stimulation. Researchers who study this call it third quarter phenomena. On long missions, morale and motivation tend to dip in the latter portion of a mission, particularly after the most exciting part is over, and the end is still not close. The astronauts know this, they are trained for it. But knowing something is coming and feeling it are two different things. They manage it in specific ways. Scheduled communication with family members back on Earth. Personal photographs and mementos they are allowed to bring. Books, music, entertainment, small rituals around meals. Humor. Astronauts on long missions joke. It is a coping mechanism and also a genuine result of the bonding that happens between people in extreme circumstances. 4 people in a space the size of a large SUV for weeks form a closeness that is hard to describe. Every quirk becomes familiar. Every mood becomes readable. There is no privacy, yet crews almost universally report that this closeness, managed well, becomes a source of strength rather than tension. Reed Wiseman as commander is particularly responsible for this. Keeping crew morale high is part of his job as real as any technical task. He checks in with each crew member. He notices when someone is quieter than usual. He makes sure the work is distributed and that no one feels overloaded or underused. The radiation situation during this mission is something the crew is constantly aware of, even if it is not something they can feel directly. Inside Earth's magnetic field, which surrounds the planet and extends out a certain distance, astronauts on the space station are largely protected from the most harmful radiation coming from the sun and from deep space. Artemis 2 leaves that protection zone entirely. Beyond Earth's magnetic field, radiation exposure increases significantly. The crew takes measurements constantly. They wear dosimeters, small devices that track exactly how much radiation each person is absorbing. Mission Control monitors these numbers. The risk is real. Radiation at this level can increase the long-term risk of cancer. It can, in high doses, cause immediate effects like nausea and fatigue. The capsule itself provides some shielding, and the crew can move to areas of the capsule with more material between them and space if a solar storm is, but it cannot be eliminated completely. It is one of the primary reasons why the mission is carefully timed and why the crew is monitored so closely. And it is one of the things that every astronaut going this far from Earth has simply accepted as part of the cost of going. As the days pass on the return journey, the body is fighting a constant battle. Bone density is being lost. Muscles are weakening despite exercise. The face remains puffy. Sleep is disrupted. On the space station, there is a day-night cycle created by the orbital path. The sun rises and sets every 90 minutes. In transit to and from the moon, there is no such cycle. The sun does not move in a way the brain can use to set its internal clock. Sleep is scheduled, but the body's natural sleep systems are confused. Melatonin levels shift. Sleep quality suffers. The crew takes mild sleep aids when necessary, and through all of this, they keep working, because the capsule still has to be maintained. Systems have to be monitored. Data has to be collected. Orion is also a science mission in addition to a crewed mission. Sensors are recording radiation data, material data, system performance. All of it feeds into planning for Artemis 3, which will actually land astronauts on the moon. The work done by this crew in enduring all of these conditions and carefully recording how the vehicle and their bodies respond is directly what will make the landing mission safer. That sense of purpose matters. Astronauts have said this many times in different ways. Knowing that what you are going through serves something beyond just your own experience makes the manageable. It gives the hard parts meaning. And then they see Earth growing again. This moment coming home has its own emotional weight. On the way out, Earth was getting smaller. They watched their entire world shrink to the size of a marble. Now it is growing back, and with it comes a feeling that former astronauts have described as almost overwhelming relief mixed with something else. Something that is hard to, a kind of tender feeling toward that growing blue dot. After weeks of seeing it from the outside, as a small, fragile thing in a vast emptiness, you come back to it differently. You come back knowing something about it that you did not know before you left. As they approach Earth, they prepare for re-entry. They get back into their launch and entry suits. They strap back in. Now comes the most physically violent part of the mission since launch. When Orion hits the atmosphere, it is moving at roughly 25,000 miles per hour. At that speed, the air in front of the capsule cannot move out of the way fast enough. It compresses, and compressed air heats up. The outside of the heat shield on Orion reaches temperatures of around 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the surface of the sun. Inside, the crew is protected by that heat, but they can see the glow. Out the windows, the plasma that forms during re-entry, ionized air, the atoms literally torn apart by the heat, glows orange and pink. And for several minutes during peak heating, they lose radio contact again. The plasma blocks signals just as the moon did, but for a different reason. They are once again alone, now fighting through a wall of fire to get home. During this phase, they experience G-forces again. Not as extreme as launch, but still significant. After weeks of feeling nothing on their bodies, of floating, of perfect weightlessness, even 2 or 3 Gs feels enormous. The weight returns suddenly and completely. Limbs that have been effortlessly floating for weeks now feel heavy. The chest feels tight. Breathing takes effort again. Gravity, which the body has been free of, comes back as a physical thing you have to push against. Parachutes deploy. The capsule swings. It slows dramatically. And then with a hard impact, a splash, it hits the Pacific Ocean. Recovery teams are already waiting. Ships are nearby. Divers enter the water immediately to attach lines to Orion and guide it safely. The hatch opens, and the astronauts, after weeks in space, try to sit up and move. And this is where one of the most striking things about the mission becomes visible to the world. They cannot walk. Not immediately. After weeks in weightlessness, the muscles that hold a person upright, that carry the full weight of the body, have weakened. The fluid that shifted to the head now rushes back to the legs and feet. Blood pressure drops in the upper body. Standing causes dizziness and sometimes near fainting. The brain, which has recalibrated to a world with no up or down, now has to relearn that information instantly. And it takes time. The astronauts are helped out. They are placed in reclining chairs on the recovery ship. Medical teams check on them immediately. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, reflexes. They are given fluids because the body becomes dehydrated during re-entry and landing. They are given simple food. They are asked to describe how they feel, and they feel terrible. This is not a secret. Coming back to gravity after weeks without it is genuinely hard on the body. Everything feels heavy. The head aches. The muscles complain. Sitting up is tiring. Standing is harder. Walking is almost comically difficult for the first day or two. The legs feel like someone else's legs, connected but not quite trusted. But underneath all of that physical difficulty, almost every astronaut reports the same emotional experience at this point. Joy. A quiet, deep, uncomplicated joy. Not the excited joy of launch, something calmer. The joy of completion, of having done something that very few humans ever get to do, of having seen things with their own eyes that photographs cannot fully capture, of having gone to the edge of the known human world and come back. In the days and weeks after return, the body slowly recovers. The bones regain some density, though it takes months. The muscles rebuild. The fluid balance normalizes. Vision, which can be affected in long-duration spaceflight, sometimes permanently, is monitored closely. The Artemis 2 mission is relatively short compared to a 6-month space station mission, so the recovery is expected to be faster, but it is not immediate. The mind also has its own adjustment. Coming home from space, even for people who have done it before, is a disorienting experience. The world on the ground suddenly seems very small in a different way than it seemed small from space. The colors seem, the smells, grass, rain, cooking food hit hard. Simple things feel profound. Standing in sunlight, feeling wind, hearing birds. These are things that sound small, but after weeks of recycled air and humming equipment, they are almost overwhelming, and there is something else. A feeling that many astronauts have described in their own words, but that always comes back to the same place. The experience cannot be fully shared. No matter how well they describe it, no matter how many interviews they give or books they write, The people asking the questions were not there. They cannot fully know what it felt like to be at the far side of the moon with the radio silent, and 8 billion people invisible behind a gray horizon. They cannot know what it felt like to watch Earth shrink to a marble. They cannot know what it felt like to feel the weight of 3 gravities pushing down on a body that had been weightless for weeks. That gap between having been there and not having been there is part of what makes the experience of astronauts like the Artemis 2 crew something that matters beyond the mission itself. They come back carrying knowledge that no book can give, and in sharing what they can of it, they bring everyone else a little bit closer to understanding what it means to go. 4 people. Okay, 230,000 miles. Weeks of weightlessness, discomfort, awe, isolation, and purpose. Bodies that fought against the conditions and kept working anyway. Minds that processed one of the most extreme situations a human can be placed in and came out the other side changed. That is what the Artemis 2 astronauts feel. Not just at launch, not just at the moon, but every single step of the way. In the bones and in the gut and in the quiet moments, looking out the window at a universe that does not care about any of us. And somehow because of that makes the fact that we went feel like one of the most important things our species has ever done.